Even though this is not a Clint Eastwood movie, I'm feeling pretty lucky about it. Hello everybody, welcome back to It's a Wonderful Podcast. Morgan, did you have a decent Christmas holiday and New Year's Day? Did you get drunk?
I had about as decent a holiday season as that opening line from you. That was very good. What a nice Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry reference there. I appreciated that one. Hello everyone, I am Morgan Robinson, that is Nolan Dean. Welcome to episode, what the hell episode are we on? 38, I think, of It's a Wonderful Podcast. Now,
our podcast is now in its midlife crisis, I think.
It's 38 seems a bit young.
I know it's near 40 that usually happens.
I'm sure it's different for different people. Has any listener of It's a Wonderful Podcast had a midlife crisis? And what age did you have it at? Use the hashtag It's a Wonderful One on Twitter and tell us when your midlife crisis was, if indeed you believe you have had one.
Mine was last month when I was trying to pick what shoes to buy.
Understandable. Which shoes did you go for?
The Superman high tops.
The Superman high tops, not the smart pair of loafers.
No, because I'm not 60.
Or the flip-flops.
Because I'm actually fashionable.
Or the Crocs.
Oh, gee. Oh, get that word out of my mouth.
Or the thigh-high boots, which I've known you to wear. Don't try and kid me.
Okay, there was one honky-tonk bar where that may have happened.
I knew it. But yes, guys, this is technically our first recording of 2019, even though it is not our first episode of this new year, because, you know, we pre-recorded before the holidays, because it was the holidays and we were all off doing our own holiday-related stuff. So, Nolan, I hope your festive period was a nice one, was a one spent with the family and a lot of niceties.
Spent in the family in Cyprus, and I was telling you guys about this on Christmas, but do not let Scottish people get drunk and then have karaoke, because it is the most disturbing thing you will ever see.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, drunk karaoke is never good at the best of times. I know that. Last time I did karaoke, I was quite drunk and didn't go well.
We'll see when they're changing every word to fuck.
Yeah.
And they're singing I would walk 500 miles. It's not the greatest thing.
Oh, that's funny. Of course they would have to be singing the Proclaimers as well, because Scotland.
It's the only song people know that's Scottish.
The only Scotland song. That and what other Scotland songs are there? I don't know. I'm not Scottish.
I'm on my way from the Proclaimers.
Well, that's true, of course, yes, from Shrek. And we'll get it in early this week. Because
and Paolo Nutini is Scottish,
true.
Which was surprising to me.
It's very true. I did forget about that. Where's he gone? What's he been doing?
I've no idea. I have a feeling he's pulling a Michael Bublé and he's just going to come out of his cave once a year.
Probably true, although I don't see Paolo Nutini doing that many Christmas albums. But who knows, he might do. Who knows what he will do. But, Nolan, today's episode, we are talking about one of your picks. We decided to do this Western Month thing because we thought we might as well, because of how much sort of we got into the discussion when we were recording Stagecoach. We thought, hell, let's make January Western Month. So we have another Western for you this week. This was Nolan's choice. Nolan, what did you choose? Why did you choose it?
I chose Rio Bravo because for years I've been told there's a hot poker scene in Rio Bravo, and I was disappointed to find there was no hot poker scene.
I like how that's the only reason. No other reason.
Also, you know, it's apparently one of the best westerns ever made. John Wayne's in it. There's a drunk Dean Martin in it.
There's a drunk Dean Martin in it. Dean Martin plays a very good drunk. If if you want my personal opinion, which you probably do want my opinion on this movie. That's probably why you are listening to this, for our opinions on the movie Rio Bravo, 1959, directed by Howard Hawks, who was probably...
That just sounds like a director name.
Howard Hawks was probably really getting on in age at this point, because Howard Hawks did Bringing Up Baby. No, he didn't. That was George Cukor. No, that was Howard Hawks. I always get them mixed up. But yeah, he must have been quite getting on in age at this point. But this is it's kind of an interesting movie to talk about, Rio Bravo, because I don't know how much you looked into it, but I want to get into this like a bit later on. Is it sort of comparison or sort of contrast with High Noon?
High Noon.
And
that's the main thing I wanted to talk about, actually.
It's a really interesting thing, because I don't need another excuse to talk about High Noon. People know how much I love that even from last week's episode. I brought up High Noon, and you want to go and listen to the High Noon episode, we've got a full episode on High Noon, so go ahead over and listen to that. But let's get I want to hear your sort of take on it, your basic take on the whole contrast situation.
When I looked that up when I finished watching the movie, and it made me like the movie less, because it felt like it was being made out of spite.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's because High Noon is basically... Well, the writer of High Noon was blacklisted in the whole...
By John Wayne.
By John Wayne and, the House of Un-American Activities, or whatever it exactly was called. House Un-American Activities Commission, something like that. That included John Wayne, and Walt Disney was in that, and Clark Gable was in that, and various other people. I think Ward Bond, who was also in this movie, was in that. And it was, of course, the blacklisting of potential communists in the entertainment industry around the 50s, early 60s, and generally that sort of time. So yeah, the writer of High Noon was blacklisted, and it makes you go back to High Noon and realise that it is kind of it is, because it's such a unique movie.
I think it's a better movie than this one.
I think it's a better movie than this one as well. I think High Noon is a better movie than this one. I think High Noon is a better Western than this one. But we found out the reason, basically, that Howard Hawks and John Wayne made this movie, Rio Bravo, was to basically show what a true American would do in the same situation that Gary Cooper found himself in High Noon. Because, of course, in High Noon, Gary Cooper he basically goes about the town asking the community for help, because the community don't help him. The community are either too scared or too cowardly, so Gary Cooper ends up, ditching the town, basically, because it's just like, I'm just going to do what I have to do now, because I'm a good human being, and I'm going to leave, because you don't help me. You all don't help me. But then John Wayne comes along and says, no, that's not what an American does. What an American does is get certain people to help him, not just anyone. We don't ask for help off anyone in America. I'm paraphrasing.
Let's just so they call up the Archetypes Factory, and then they all solve this thing.
They do. I mean, it works. Of course, it works in the movie, at least in the story of the movie. But I don't know. I think it's why I think High Noon is a far more interesting movie.
I hate that attitude, though. That is like me calling up, hey, M. Night Shyamalan, I saw your movie Unbreakable recently, and I'm going to show you how to do a real superhero movie, so I'm going to direct Green Lantern.
I mean, I wouldn't compare the two like that. Rio Bravo is still a very well-made movie. Rio Bravo is a...
True, but it's the whole spite thing that really gets to me. Like, that's probably the worst way to create something.
No, I understand that completely, and I do agree, because it is made to not to spite High Noon, but to as a depiction of what, you know, John Wayne and the House Un-American Activities wanted to say was correct, basically, you know, wanted to portray as
Before
right.
I found that out, I was actually ready to say Rio Bravo, yeah, pretty great movie, and then when I found that out, I'm like, oh jeez.
I mean, that's sort of where the difficulty would come in, because you can't. It is a very well made movie. It's an enjoyable movie. It's quite a polished western. It's not got the sort of, I don't quite feel it's got the realism of something like High Noon, or
The colours are way too bright.
Or the sort of, I don't know. Let's try and compare it to Stagecoach. It's not quite got the, not necessarily realism, but
Scope.
I mean, in terms of scope, it is quite a small story, I guess, Rio Bravo. It's not as grand as Stagecoach. It isn't as sweeping as Stagecoach, because it focuses on John Wayne, who plays the sheriff, Sheriff Chance, in the town of Rio Bravo, and he is basically a police movie. It's basically it's like a movie.
It's like Miami Vice and the Wild West.
Yeah, it's like a lawman movie. More than anything else, it's just John Wayne protecting his town from the I forget what the villain's name is. Something. I don't know.
Some rival
He's
gang.
a brother.
Western.
Yeah, he's a brother of someone they've already arrested, basically.
They took this movie to the trope factory when it comes to the stories.
Yes, but you can't argue that it works.
It does, but unlike High Noon, it doesn't really do anything interesting with it. Just kind of goes for the, here's a story you like, enjoy it, eat your popcorn, fuckers.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. And, you know, say what you want about John Wayne's political views or whatever. He does what he does very, very well. He does.
I'm pretty sure he was probably not a very nice man in real life.
Well, I'm sure he was a nice man to his friends. He maybe wasn't a nice man to people he suspected were communists. And what is another interesting thing about that is the writer of High Noon previously had been a communist, like a member of the Communist Party. But he wasn't at the time he was writing High Noon. So, I don't know. It's very, very... It's somewhat touchy subject. But you can't disagree with the product these people created on both sides, even though we both seem to agree that High Noon is not only the more interesting film, definitely as far as I'm concerned, it's the tighter film, it's the more sort of gripping.
It's way better paced.
It's a gripping movie, whereas this is, yeah, like you said before, it is kind of a popcorn western. Not to the level of something like The Magnificent Seven, but
oh no.
It maybe because it's of its Technicolor, which of course it is shot in glorious Technicolor, which I do love, but tends to make westerns feel quite painted and quite staged, which
I think
this movie does.
You can tell a lot about John Wayne's character, like
as a person himself,
who as a person, by how the other characters are treated in this movie compared to him.
Oh, I mean, he is outright the hero. Of course he is. He always is. He always is. He's John Wayne. That's what he's made for.
It reminds me of that time where I heard Will Smith turn down the lead role in Django Unchained because he didn't get to kill the bad guy.
Yeah, that's not really. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah.
That's kind of not. Yeah, I don't know. Some actors may have this.
John
opinion
Wayne
of
seems like
themselves.
he's in that kind of. He seems like a very egotistical person.
Although, I mean, having said that, this was John Wayne's first Western in, I think, 3 years. And at that point, that's quite a long time for John Wayne not to do a Western. Because I think some of his ones were, whether they were doing poorly at the box office or critically or whatever, because he was sort of transferring from the romantic lead, like he was in something like Stagecoach or something like that, to this more stoic, typical John Wayne man.
Well, he was getting older. That makes sense.
He was getting older, and he was trying to figure out what how he fit into westerns in his slightly older age. I think he was 51 at the time he was making Rio Bravo. So, and it's sort of a return to form for him, but in this different form, in this more what we picture as John Wayne type form. Because if you look at him in Stagecoach, he is kind of, he's the quick young kid, and of course he is, because that's like a long, it's 20 years before this movie was made. But that's what John Wayne was up to sort of around this point. And then, 10 years after this, we get like True Grit, where he just gets grizzled and really nasty as a sort of, crusty old dude.
Oh
Whereas
yeah.
he's not quite reached that level in Rio Bravo, but he is, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, he's on his way.
He is, but as far as I'm concerned, this is sort of peak John Wayne. This is when John Wayne was at his most John Wayne, and that is pleasing to me as someone who appreciates John Wayne's acting for what he did, or what, how he portrayed these characters exactly as they should have been portrayed. Like, you look at a John Wayne character and you picture John Wayne, because you think of a Western hero and you picture John Wayne, because he tends to be always calm and, like I said, stoic. Stoic is a very big aspect of John Wayne.
He's so stoic.
But it's really
God.
it is really entertaining to me. It is I can really appreciate his acting style, and I never used to be able to. I always used to think he was quite wooden, but rewatching some of John Wayne's stuff, I realised that he does very little, but that's exactly what he's supposed to be doing. He's not supposed to be emoting so much to the level of to the level of some of his other co-stars. I mean, you look at Dean Martin, who I actually think gives the best performance in this movie, by quite a way.
He's called Dude,
He's
right?
called Dude.
A role that would later be replayed by that dude from The Big Lebowski.
Jeff Bridges.
Name. Jeff Bridges, yeah.
Was it what?
I get him and Kurt Russell mixed
you
up.
You get Jeff Bridges. Oh, that's understandable, I suppose. Getting Jeff Bridges. They do look quite similar, although Jeff Bridges is slightly older.
I'm surprised they haven't played brothers yet.
Maybe they have. If they haven't, that would kind of be interesting. I would see that, although they are kind of different performers, Jeff Bridges and Kurt Russell. I think Kurt Russell still, in the age he is now, is far more able to do action type stuff than Jeff Bridges, who can probably get a more emotional, more sort of powerhouse performance out of, but it won't have the same amount of fun of Kurt Russell. So maybe it'd be nice to see them two as some sort of brothers. That'd be quite interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. But yes, Dean Martin in this movie plays the alcoholic dude who John Wayne's sheriff takes on board, as he is one of the people that John Wayne chooses to help him, because John Wayne is not Gary Cooper. He doesn't ask for anyone's help, even though we see throughout Rio Bravo a lot of people offer John Wayne their help.
Just so he can turn it down.
We see Ward Bond do that. And Ward Bond's in a load of westerns as well. I can't remember his character's name in this, but John Wayne basically turns down his services for the services of Ward Bond's sort of younger deputy or younger sort of assistant, who is Colorado, played by Ricky Nelson, the teenage heartthrob singer of the time, which is fun, I guess.
It is pretty fun, and you do see him playing the guitar in this movie, which is pretty delightful.
I mean, naturally, to have Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson in a movie, you got to have a few songs in there, and there's a couple of songs in there, and Dean Martin does his Dean Martin singing, Ricky Nelson does his Ricky Nelson singing.
John Wayne's definitely not singing.
John Wayne is definitely not singing, and even what's his name, Stumpy, who plays Stumpy, he gets to sing at some point. In the whole thing, he might be my favourite character in the entire movie because he's absolutely insane. But I find him very, very entertaining. He is kind of the comic relief, if you want to look at it like that.
Yep, and
Walter Brennan. Walter Brennan. Well done.
I will go back to something I said before, is that you can tell a lot about who John Wayne was as a person from how the other characters in this story are treated compared to him.
Yeah, go into that a bit.
Like the woman being all over him for no apparent reason other than he's John Wayne.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that can also be put down to just throw a romance story in there for the sake of throwing a romance story in there. It has to be done.
The Mexican character just kind of existing to be pushed around by John Wayne.
Again, yes. Although I really do like him. I think he's a good...
He's fun.
I think he's a fun character. But yeah, he is kind of like... John Wayne will walk into this man's bar and just be like, yeah, I'm just going to take over this bar. And he's just like, okay, just do it. It's fine, okay. And yeah, okay, like, please have some sort of respect for yourself. What is his name?
I don't know, but I don't even think I heard his name.
I don't know. That's probably bad that we don't know his name, but it's probably because it's... No, it must be said. Let me have a look. But I do think he's a fun character. His wife doesn't get to do a lot, but yeah, the romantic interest of John Wayne, who is Angie Dickinson, who's quite a lot younger than John Wayne, which is...
Oh, there you go. Add more to John Wayne's real character.
Well, that happens all the time. That still happens now, so you can't... Carlos. Of course it is. Yeah.
What was Juan already taken?
Well, I don't know. Carlos is a name that people have, so it's just like calling anybody anything. I don't think you can look into that too much. I think you can look into the slightly stereotypical nature of Carlos a little bit, but you can also...
Which is always the thing that puts me off about these kind of movies.
Does it honestly put you off?
It always leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
I understand why, and yeah, to a point it does for me as well. But what tends to happen with me is that I look at this as it's a movie from 1959. This sort of stuff is going to be presented this way. There's nothing I can do about it now. I'm glad that we are not still presenting the majority of characters of this sort of type in the same way in modern movies, but I tend to look at it like that. I don't know. I don't think any of us is right or wrong.
Neither. It's just something that it's a very personal thing.
Yeah, and it's not as though I don't think that this is a bad depiction of or this is a less than perfect depiction of a Mexican gentleman.
And what frustrates me is that there's potential there to actually give him a good character story. Like, he's a guy who runs his own business. There's something in that.
Yeah, but again, the movie isn't focused on him. He's a character that serves his purpose in the story, and that's only the story's fault for not making him a bigger part or have more to do. And even saying that, Ricky Nelson himself doesn't have a great deal to do.
No, he doesn't.
He's sort of in there presumably to attract an audience. He must have been billed on this film to basically say, oh, Ricky Nelson's in this movie. Guys, come and see it, come and see it, come and see it. We want money.
Ugh.
Because he doesn't do a lot. And I found out a nice little bit of trivia about Ricky Nelson is that he actually celebrated his 18th birthday on set. He's very young.
John Wayne was probably pouring him scotch from that bar.
No, I'll tell you what John Wayne did to him, which was what I found out, was that John Wayne and Dean Martin gave him a £300 sack of manure that they then threw him into. As a nice rite of passage or prank or something like that, something to boost chemistry on set. It worked, I guess. The chemistry works fine, even though Ricky Nelson doesn't have a great deal to do. I do think Dean Martin and John Wayne play off each other really well.
Dean Martin's the more fun one to watch for me.
Dean Martin is definitely the sort of best element about this movie. He gives the best performance. He also gives the most complex performance because it is a guy getting over alcoholism to eventually, become a worthy member of this team, a member of this community that is respected, and he helps, win the day. So, well done, dude.
I will say there's one really cool scene that I like, and that's when they're in the bar with all the gang, and then I think he turns around and just shoots the shooter because he sees blood falling into a glass.
Yeah. I mean,
that was a very cool scene.
Yeah, it was. There's always nice little shootouts. It's weird because in westerns I tend to prefer the smaller shootouts that happen before the big one at the end. Like, the big one at the end is, it's a climactic shootout, but little stuff like that you've just mentioned, that really sort of, that's what I really tend to enjoy. Reminds me of the scene at the start of A Fistful of Dollars, where Clint Eastwood obviously comes into town, and the first thing he does is stands there, and we get the whole sort of dramatic pauses and shots that Sergio Leone was known for doing, before he just quickly shoots the three guys. Perfect. Don't give me any more of that. Again, the same. The start of Once Upon a Time in the West does pretty much the same thing with Charles Bronson's harmonica. He shoots the three guys. Although I think that one is a little better because it's a little more tense and a little more sort of entertaining to watch. As opposed to the
shootout in this one is just...
It's a shootout.
It reminds me of like the third act is uninspired criticisms.
Yeah. It's a shootout. It's a climax for the sake of there being a climax.
All that's missing is a sky beam.
I wouldn't go that far. I can tell that you maybe didn't enjoy this movie as much as you thought you might.
I wanted to love it, but it left me with the sourest taste, and not like a Sour Patch Kids good sour kind of taste. The sort of I accidentally drank expired milk kind of taste.
I mean, there must have been some more things to this that you did enjoy. There must have been.
That scene in the bar with the shooter, the chemistry with Dean Martin and John Wayne, and I like some of the monologue-y stuff, but that's just because, writer.
Do you not like Stumpy?
He's fine.
Stumpy's fun.
He does his part.
Do you not like the story at all?
Not really. It's kind of an uninspiring story.
Wow.
And the whole comparison to High Noon is just... It kind of irritates me more.
Wow. This was your pick.
I know.
This is quite surprising. Well... What? Well... It's interesting. It's interesting because it's rare that we seem to come up on a film that we pick that we're really looking forward to, and then it just kind of disappoints. Like, I had seen this before. I think, like I said, I think it's a well-made film. It's more of a popcorn western. It's not really got too many interesting, depth to it as much as High Noon or even Stagecoach has, because yes, Rio Bravo is another example of the community western, which we talked about last week, with Stagecoach, as opposed to the lone wolf westerns, where John Wayne gets the people together and they help save the community and become a community, a little community of themselves. Due to that, it's not Clint Eastwood riding into town and then going back out when he's finished. They stay in that town all the time. That is their town. And that's what I like about westerns, is that they are the perfect depiction of the American dream. They are the reason European settlers went out west in the first place, because there was new lands out west. And yes, okay, they murdered all the Native Americans in mass genocide, which is horrible and nobody likes, unless you're a madman. But they were doing it for the American dream. Might not actually be as good a thing as we think it is.
I don't think it ever is. There's about 1,000 movies I can think of that have that message.
At its core, the American dream is about taking other people's land and owning it for yourself. Okay, America. But also, westerns are very good at portraying the American dream in terms of having a sense of community, having a sense of something that you have built up yourself, and individualism and all that sort of stuff. They're very good at doing that. Community westerns in particular are very good at doing that, which is why it is the American genre. And even though, mass genocide had to, didn't have to, but it happened. We can't forget that the amount of Native Americans that European settlers in the US killed in order to go out west in the first place.
Oh yeah.
And we think of the Wild West being a romanticized place.
It's very romanticized in this.
It is very romanticized in this. It's way more romanticized in this than in High Noon. It's way more romanticized in this than in Stagecoach.
High Noon at least did some unique stuff and challenged what a western could be. This is just we're gonna show you how it's really done, and then they look at a manual. I just don't like that kind of thinking or way of creating at all.
But how about this? Isn't Rio Bravo more of an American western than High Noon?
I suppose so.
It is. I think that's a fair statement, because of what I mean. It's a very sort of broad term to be American. What is the American dream? What does it mean to be American? But John Wayne certainly thought he knew what it meant to be American, And
To be stoic and shoot things and blow things up with dynamite, yeah.
and
Good on
yeah,
you, John.
to be independent, seemingly, to get help from the people that you want help from, rather than just accept help off the whole community, in order to better that community. It's kind of distancing in a way. Which is again why I tend to prefer High Noon, because it feels very much like everyone has a part to play, even though they don't. Ultimately, in that story, nobody else plays a part. But the idea of it is that they all have a part to play, or at least, Will Kane, Gary Cooper's character, goes to them wanting them to play a part, rather than John Wayne, who does not want anybody else. He wants to do it for himself. And doing it for yourself is a very traditionally American thing.
Which, fair enough, but they never really explore that beyond, I'm doing this myself because I'm John Wayne.
No, but it is there. It might be more two-dimensional than High Noon, because High Noon is a very morally complex movie anyway. And although what do you prefer? Do you prefer this or Stagecoach?
Probably Stagecoach. There's more going on in that.
What's going on in Stagecoach then for you that wasn't in this?
Well, the characters are more challenging. I remember the prostitute character in Stagecoach was actually way more engaging, and there was a lot of character debate amongst that. I like the idea of John Wayne being the outlaw and then showing the good side of him as well. It's showing that there's more to them than what's on paper, whereas Rio Bravo feels like this is what's on paper. Stick to it. It's a very conservative type of view.
It is a very
conservative
I don't like
view.
That. It is a very conservative view because it was made by conservatives with conservatives, and even I saw that Montgomery Clift, who was a bisexual liberal actor at the time, turned down the Dean Martin role because he didn't want to work with John Wayne again.
I don't blame him.
Because of politics. And yeah, you can understand why, especially with John Wayne going about blacklisting a load of people, or being a heavy part of that.
Maybe he was method acting and wanted to run them out of town like the Western heroes. He was doing a Jared Leto.
That would, that would be more of an entertaining story. That would be more of an intriguing story. I think that actually would be more of an acceptable story, but I don't think it was the case. But yeah, politics does have quite a big part to play in when you actually look at this movie. It is a very conservative movie, but it's not. That's not necessarily a bad thing for me, because again, I think it does what it does very, very well. It might not be
for what it sets out to do. It does it well. I just don't like what it sets out to do. That's probably what's stopping me from enjoying it. And trust me, I'm way more disappointed than I wanted to be.
Yeah, I can tell. No, I can tell, and that's fine. That's why we do this show in the first place. It's to find these older movies, and we may not necessarily always enjoy them, but at least to a point we appreciate them for what they do and what they're trying to say, because again, I think Rio Bravo does what it sets out to very, very well. Again, this is you just simply not agreeing with what it's saying, and this is me not necessarily agreeing with what it's saying either, especially when it's compared to High Noon, or even the Lone Wolf Westerns. I tend to prefer the Lone Wolf Westerns because they tend to be very, very much more individualistic and free, and it's not necessarily about the place, it's about the people, and the community western. Yeah, it's about building up that place. The Lone Wolf Western is its own more outlawish kind of thing, which I tend to gravitate more towards. but I wanted to do Western Month to look at a bit more of the community, more American tradition. I use American like very quote unquote terms. That style of Western, because there's well-made films there, and this is a well-made film, and I can appreciate Rio Bravo for what it does, because I think it does what it does very well, as I've said about 14 times.
That's fair. Although I could probably go on a little rant here as to why this really gets under my skin.
I mean, go for it. It's interesting.
It gives off the impression to me that there's only one way to write a story, and that is just simply not the case. If this was an attitude like, oh, we saw High Noon, we wanted to do a Western that we think would be great also, and then made Rio Bravo, fair enough, but they acted like, no, we can do better than you, and you suck, and we're going to run you out of town. That's acting like, oh, there's only one right way to do this, and you're doing it wrong, and screw you for having, like, a unique vision or anything like that. That stuff just really rubs me the wrong way as a writer, because I'm the kind of guy who would do all these weird and interesting new twists on existing genres, because just sticking to a genre convention thing without doing anything with it, I find that so boring and uninspired. And it's usually my least favourite types of movies that come out are the ones that are uninspired. I'd rather a movie be bad in an interesting way than be mediocre in a bland way.
I like that. I like that. I understand exactly what you're saying. I really do. I just think I'm looking at it from the point of inevitability that this movie was made like this, rather than looking at it as you are, because there is, quite a big part of me that completely agrees with you, and that it is, it is not nice to make a movie trying to say this is a better movie than what you guys did. It's not nice to do that, but also look at it.
All of it can coexist, though.
It can, but look at it historically. At this time, they didn't want this to coexist. Because High Noon was made by communists as far as these people were concerned. And that was bad at this time in history.
That really reminds me of the attitude towards The Last Jedi.
Was The Last Jedi made by... Oh, I see.
This was made by liberal people, like that kind of attitude.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's, modern-day John Wayne making his version of The Last Jedi. There probably isn't, because he's probably not as good as John Wayne.
No, trust me, there is a guy who's making his own version of The Last Jedi.
He can't act like John Wayne, though, can he? He's not as captivating an actor as John Wayne. No, he's just some guy.
Probably not.
Who's clueless.
He's some guy in a basement somewhere drinking Mountain Dew.
Everybody in this movie has talent. There's, there's not a bad thing about this movie other than the reason it was made, and the style of it, which not the style of it, but the messages to it that we somewhat disagree with. Because the idea of creating a community is not something we disagree with here. That's that's a very good thing. But yeah. The conservative undertones and it's not wrong, it's not correct either way. You can believe what you want to believe, have your own political views as long as you're a good person. I don't care what you believe. Okay? I don't care what you believe. Maybe don't try and blacklist people like John Wayne did. Because that's not very nice. I don't care what you
believe either. Just don't use that as an excuse for hurting people.
Yeah, and don't use that as an excuse for hurting people. Don't use that as an excuse for trying to say we're going to do it better than you because you are this. Now, if they were going up against fellow members of the House Un-American Activities trying to make a Western, maybe that would be a different conversation, because I'm sure that would be a better competition on who can because that would be that they would obviously see that as a fair competition. I don't think Howard Hawks and John Wayne and everybody making this movie saw it as a fair competition because they disregarded the validity of High Noon, because in their eyes it was made by communists and these people were evil. So I look at it from a sort of, it was made in that time, in that sort, with that mindset. So it just sort of that just sits on the top of my head, and I just appreciate the movie for doing what it does.
That's fair.
It's just a different viewpoint. It's
I suppose so. Yeah.
I am a fairly liberal human being. I just am not. Yeah, I just, it doesn't matter to me what you believe as long as you are pleasant. It doesn't matter to me at all. If you're hurting people, then yeah, there's a problem there. And if you are doing things out of spite, then yeah, there's a little problem there. But also, you can even get into the discussion of art or artist. Which do you focus on? Which is a very touchy subject.
It's hard to separate, honestly.
It is hard to separate. It is hard to separate. But in terms of this, maybe because it was well before we were alive, maybe because we didn't live through it, is that I can look at this as a piece of history rather than if something like this was happening today or was happening in my lifetime that I was fully aware of. And because I'm not going to go out now, and if there's a really, Trump supportive movie, I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm not going to be able to appreciate the well-crafted cinematography of that movie, because I'm just going to think of it like, no, leave, go away now.
Don't watch Goaty then.
No, I'm not going to watch stuff like that, right? But looking at it as a piece of history, there's certain instances, like, I'm not going to watch Triumph of the Will and be like, this is a great piece of propaganda. I'm going to be watching it going, this is horrific, turn it off. But when it's stuff like this, when it's simply a political argument that's, yeah, it's blacklisting people and the blacklisting was bad, but when it's sort of slightly less severe, at least to me, looking at it from now and viewing it as more of a piece of history, I can appreciate it a little bit more than I potentially would do.
Oh, I will always stick up for my fellow writers, so I kind of can't.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's why it's good to have discussions on these things. I'm sure you hate the fact that the writer of High Noon was blacklisted because he was doing something clever and different. And I hate that too, but this is more personal for you. And it
definitely
makes sense.
And that's kind of all I have to say about the Bravo of Rios.
So all you have to say about RIO BRAVO.
We could ask Raul what it was like when this movie came out. What was the discussion online?
He was 57 at the time. So,
indeed.
I don't know. Maybe it was. I don't know. I don't think he would have been pleased with the depiction of Carlos.
Probably not.
Well, who knows? Does Carlos do things useful? Carlos, I suppose, is useful as a character, but yeah, he is a pushover, which is...
He's basically this movie's version of Apu from The Simpsons.
That's not inaccurate.
Runs his own business, gets pushed around by the white characters.
That's very accurate. Fair enough. Yeah. It's kind of like that's a good comparison, actually. I like that comparison, even though I really don't like the fact that comparison can be made. But I like the comparison. I think we're probably gonna try and wrap this discussion up because that's my mobile phone alarm. So please ignore that, good listener. But I don't know. Is there anything else you would like to say that you haven't said about, whether it's about Rio Bravo, whether it's about westerns in general? Because we have 2 more westerns that we're going to do this month. I don't know necessarily what they are. I need to pick one for next week, and you need to pick one for the week after. Maybe we try and maybe as far as your picks go, we don't delve into. I don't know. You maybe do want to do another John Wayne, but I don't know. I just want to get some of your final thoughts on
my final thoughts. If you want to know any more of what I think of this, I'm going to redirect you to a video I made called "The Shining: Killing Your Writers."
Okay.
And that'll probably sum up my entire thoughts on this whole thing.
Okay. It's interesting. Okay. Well,
Rio Bravo is a well-made film made out of spite. Do not create things out of spite.
Even if they're good.
No one likes reading stuff out of spite. That's why I burn the letters in my diary that I wrote about my ex-girlfriend.
That's a very wise thing to do.
They are spiteful, they are toxic, they don't deserve to be seen by anyone else, and they made a pretty good fire.
I think you should watch Rio Bravo because it's entertaining. It's well made. It's John Wayne. Like I said, it's peak John Wayne. If you like John Wayne, you will enjoy this movie. It's good to watch this movie knowing the background, because then you are able to have discussions like this about it, and it can be a more worthwhile experience to watch a movie. It's always very interesting to watch a movie that you appreciate but don't agree with some of the undertones too. It's always very, very interesting. It'd be nice to always watch movies we were like, yeah, that's great. Like, I'm thinking of Black Klansman, right? From earlier this year. Great movie. Completely agree with what it's saying politically, right? Yeah. It'd be nice to watch Black Klansman over and over and over again, and for us to, just be basically taught to believe this one thing because it's all we see all the time. It'd be nice, but that's not realistic in the world. There are different views. There are opposing views, and like I said, as long as you're a good person, I don't care what you believe, right? I don't. You can be any religion you want, any political stance you want, apart from like neo-Nazi. I mean, there's no need at that point. But if you're a good person, then I'm gonna respect you, and if you're a good movie like Rio Bravo, I'm going to respect you, despite your contrasting political stance compared to the better movie High Noon. Better.
Fair enough. So, did you get any crazy gifts for Christmas? Because I got something really great on the way back from duty free.
Whoa! I'm interested to know what that was actually.
For €15, I got a bottle of Johnny Walker Red Label.
Okay, 15.
That I'm not going to open until I get that email back from the literary agent.
Ah, it's celebration alcohol. I like the celebration. I was treated to some soundproof foam for the walls in this room to help this sound better. I hope it does sound better. If it doesn't sound better, then the soundproof foam hasn't worked. Or
I hope you kept the receipts.
Or maybe I just need to put more of it up. But that's kind of fun, because that also helps the show. And I'm into that. But the real question is, and we're not even talking about Rio Bravo, is how drunk did you get on New Year's?
Well, when I got there, my aunt asked me, "What do you want to drink?" And I just said, "Something with whiskey."
Very nice. I didn't have a single drink on New Year's. Although I did see the New Year in, which is unusual for me. because I don't usually stay up to see the
I
new
did
year.
see the new year in, but I spent the next 2 hours being so tired whilst my mum was gossiping.
Gossiping.
My mum's a gossiper.
Do you like listening to gossip? That's a no, isn't it? That's a
No.
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 To be honest, neither do I. Neither do I. It's not nice. Do you know what gossip is, Nolan? Spiteful.
Yep. And you see anything cool over the holidays?
Apart from Aquaman, which I would have seen. Yeah, I would have seen after we recorded last. So Aquaman was great. I loved Aquaman. I did actually
too.
haven't seen any more movies other than that.
I quite enjoyed Bandersnatch.
Yeah, see, I didn't watch that. I also haven't watched Bird Box.
But Blind a Quiet
Blind
Place.
A Quiet Place, or Blind Hush, or whatever else it is.
I would recommend you watch Bandersnatch. It's really fun.
Doesn't it take like hours and hours to get through, though?
Depends on the choices you make.
Okay.
I made it last for 2 hours, and trust me, you won't want it to end.
I don't know.
Just
what I did watch.
Go for Will Poulter's bleach blonde hair.
What I did watch, which was the highlight really of the entire holiday season, was the second season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel,
Which I've heard is
which
great.
is outstanding.
The guy from Glee's in that, isn't
The guy
he?
from I don't know. I didn't watch Glee. I don't know if anyone from Glee is in it.
Matthew Morrison, I think the actor's name is.
Uh,
He's got kind of curly hair.
I don't recall anyone with curly hair in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
I know he was up for Green Lantern at one point.
I don't know. Zachary
well.
Levi's in season 2 though.
Well, I like Zachary
So-
Levi because we're probably getting a Shazam trailer next week.
Maybe. That should be out soon. Actually, when's that out? March.
April. First week of
First week of April. Oh,
I'm looking
is it
forward
for April
to that.
Fools or something like that? When's April
Yeah,
Fools this year? Is that on a
and,
Friday? I don't know.
Oh, the Limitless card has come back from the Odeon.
So you're going to see everything these days now?
I'm gonna go see. I've booked tickets already for Glass and How to Train Your Dragon 3.
See, I didn't even realize.
I
didn't even realize How to Train Your Dragon 3 was a thing until very recently.
I'm probably gonna go catch up on the movies I missed, so I need to see The Favourite and
Yeah,
Mary Poppins
I haven't
Returns
seen
and that.
anything. I have not seen anything, and I'm getting to the point now where I just don't think I care enough. I don't know. It's weird. I'm in a weird stage where I'd rather just watch Mrs. Maisel over and over again, because it's delightful and it's great. And
Well,
everybody
I think
go and
that'll
watch
probably
that.
do us for the. I think that'll do us for this
I think it
episode.
will.
Yeah.
We've had a nice discussion on some holiday things. We have had a very, very worthwhile discussion on Rio Bravo and its positives and negatives depending on how you're looking at it. I do not have a pick as of yet for next week's Western, but it's going to be a Western because we are in Western month, and Westerns are a very interesting genre to talk about, as we have found out, having now covered 3 Westerns in our 38 episodes, and them all being very, very worthwhile discussions. This
Indeed.
perhaps being the most negative of them, even though it's still a very good film. But yes, Nolan, are you up to anything at the minute? What's going on other than what we've already discussed? Anything?
Just waiting on that response.
As always, I wonder how hard we're gonna party on this show when the response comes.
If it's positive, very hard.
If it's negative,
Let's just say I'll be bringing out the whiskey again. But
So
for a very
you'll be
different
bringing out
reason.
the whiskey regardless, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, but it depends on how much I'll drink of it.
will it make for a more entertaining episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast if it is positive or negative response?
Well, if it's negative, I will be drinking it from the bottle. If it's positive, I'll be drinking it from my scotch glass.
I do not want you to get a negative response. However, a drunk episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast is a potential. It's episode 50 soon. Well, not soon, but who knows what we're going to do. I'm not even thinking about that fairly reasonable milestone yet. But yes, guys, that was episode 38 of It's a Wonderful Podcast. We have just hit the hour mark, so we are perfect for time. So yay us. You can find the podcast on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Find me on Twitter at the Purple Don with a 3 instead of the E in the, because 3 is the magic number. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Castbox, anywhere else you might be able to find podcasts. It is probably there. To be honest, it's probably there because that's the benefit of having a hosting site, is it distributes the podcast to a lot of places that you can download and listen. And before I forget, I have a short list of people who've left some nice things about the show recently.
Ooh, we have reviews.
Yes, we have some reviews. We have some things of support. So I would like to give a special... Well, first of all, I'd like to give a shout out to anyone who listens to the show. And frankly, to anyone who's ever listened to an episode of the show. It's 2019 now, and we've been doing this for nearly a year. And it's great to still be able to do it. It's great to know that there are some people that listen. And it makes me smile at least, because I really enjoy doing this show. And I like discovering new, older movies that I haven't watched. And Rio Bravo was one that I had watched previously, but Nolan hadn't. So it always happens that one of us hasn't seen the movie for any given week. So it's always very interesting. And but yeah, I would like to give a shout out to everybody who listens, first of all, and who shares every time we post a new episode. All of you mean a great deal, and we all wish you a very good 2019. But I would like to give a special shout out to Janine the Machine, the designer of our logo, as many of you know, who left a nice review on the I can't remember which episode it was, but I got the review in, and it was where I did the French accent. It was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, wasn't it? Where I did the French accent, and she left a nice comment on the French accent. A nice 5-star Apple Podcast review from Janine the Machine. So thank you, Janine, and thank you to Rachel Silverstreeny as well for showing your support on Twitter with a nice tweet of support, and as well to Langley M. Neely, who also shows some lovely Twitter specific support. So special shout out to those three guys, but yes, truly a shout out to everybody who listens and who shares the show at all. I mean, we all love you. And that was my sort of loving rant there as we come to the end of this episode.
I love them all as well.
Good.
They're all great.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can find those reviews so I can read them out before I go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very nice. But, yeah, that is episode 38 of It's a Wonderful Podcast. I've already plugged away. You can find Nolan on Twitter at NolanDean27, because Nolan...
27th of March is
27th of March is his birthday. He doesn't have a cool thing to say like I do. Like 3 is the magic number, which I love saying that every week. It's why I can't not say it anymore. I just have to. It's whenever.
You can also
whenever I
find
say-
me at my Gmail address, staring at my inbox until I get a response.
Yes, you can. Although that's not very entertaining for people to watch you do that. Just gonna.
No, it's
Just
not.
gonna
There's
put
just a
out
lot
there.
of hysterical crying and yelling at the screen saying, please send a message.
Yeah. Guys, use the hashtag It's a Wonderful One on Twitter as well if you want to talk to us, whether it's about westerns. Give us an idea of maybe what specialist genre month we could do in the future. I like doing these things, at least. I don't know. I'm sure no one likes doing them as well.
I do when they're
You
good.
do when they're good. He didn't like Rio Bravo, guys. He didn't like it at all. It's kind of funny. He's not been this negative since the Peter Pan episode.
Oh,
You see, he's very angry. He's very angry, guys. But yes, please use that hashtag It's a Wonderful One and mention us on Twitter if you want to discuss westerns or another genre that we could do, or any film that we have done or that you would like to see us do as well.
If you want to discuss Disney's Peter Pan, tweet Morgan, not me.
I mean, I will accept that. Thank you, guys, for listening, as always. Until next time, from me, goodbye, Nolan. See us out in 2019.
Don't write things out of spite. See you later, guys. Goodbye.
No one's very negative today. Goodbye, guys.